Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is Friday, September 30th, 2016, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, as hackers across the country infect cameras, DVRs, and the internet, security experts warn of an impending hack attack on our nation's voting systems.
We are just as sick and tired of the corrupt, malicious system as the next person. The current democratic institutions are not only failing us, they're making our lives unbearable.
Meanwhile, the dead live, and they are voting Democrat. Plus, the UN launches their very own propaganda campaign to stop Donald Trump. And Megyn Kelly tells Team Trump to just shut up.
Why don't they just shut up about the women and how big they're supposed to be?
All that plus much more up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Well, here's something we couldn't see coming from a mile away. Millions of smart devices have already been infected by an army of hackers. Of course, we've told you these so-called smart devices are completely vulnerable and susceptible to hackers. Well, now attackers have used an army of hijacked security cameras and video recorders to launch several massive internet attacks. This happened last week. And of course, this is prompting fresh concerns about the vulnerability of millions of smart devices in homes and businesses that are connected to the internet. So the attackers used as many as 1 million Chinese-made security cameras, digital video recorders, and other infected devices to generate web page requests and data that knocked their targets offline. So they say it's unclear whether these attackers had access to video feeds from the devices. I'm sure they did, though, but it's not like people are going to really know what all was revealed by these hackers or to, what they were able to get into. But people only realized that they were being attacked when their websites are being taken down. And so the reason why experts are so concerned with this now is because hackers used to infiltrate people's personal security, personal computers that they would have set up or unsecured Wi-Fi systems. But now they're actually going in to these devices that are meant to be plugged in and then forgotten about, like your refrigerator or your light bulbs or your cars. So these are things that are now susceptible to hackers, and they are being used to take out their intended targets. Right now, what they're doing is they're doing denial of service attacks, which is one website said the traffic that was hitting their website was akin to the equivalent of 140,000 high-def movies streaming all at once. So you can imagine the kind of lag that had. But now, of course, they're saying people that they're really requesting that you and I take the initiative to protect our own devices and go in and really back up the firmware. But how are you supposed to ask someone to patch their refrigerator or their Google Nest thermostat? So this is a completely insane world, but we are just forging ahead, full steam into this technocratic takeover. But that's not all. Hackers are also targeting our voting machines. So these are voting systems that have been targeted in 20 different states thus far. So here's another conspiracy theory until it isn't a theory, it's actually fact. And of course, this is FBI Director James Comey saying that bad actors are at work poking around in electoral databases. He's the only bad actor I'm seeing poking around here affecting this election cycle by getting his little buddy Hillary Clinton off. But of course, intelligence officials believe the hackers are from Russia. But they say, don't worry, any of the voting and tabulation machines used in the general election on election day, they're not accessible online. So we've already shown you how those are susceptible to hackers. The only difference this time will be that they can't blame it on the Russians unless they send in their little Russian agents to work on the machines right there at the polling stations, as people can easily do. But here they're worried about foreign actors influencing the election. What about the United Nations? They're unelected representatives that are allowed to tell people how to vote. Well, the UN, their news agency, actually tweeted and then quickly deleted their tweet. It was a post that called for 8 million Americans abroad to stop Trump. It was a tweet that was published Thursday evening, urging American expats to share a voter registration tool on the website of the activist organization INFOWARS. It states U.S. citizens abroad could defeat Trump if they voted. And the webpage is titled The October Surprise That Will End Trump. So not only do we see they're going in and hacking in, blaming it on the Russians, they're signing up many people, trying to get as many new citizens signed up as they possibly can, like that beauty queen that everyone is continually talking about that is coming out after Trump. And that's not it, but they're also registering the dead. That's right, the dead are voting Democrats. An investigation launched in Harrisonburg, I believe this is in Virginia, after 20 voter applications were turned in under the names of dead people. And they only figured this out because someone there, an employee who was working in the city, recognized the name of one of these dead people. It was actually a distinguished resident and someone that had been working for the city for many years. So that's how they were able to say, whoa, wait a minute, this guy died a while ago. And so now Republican lawmakers are saying, this is just further proof that voter fraud is real, and it validates the push for stronger voter ID laws. But of course, the Democratic colleagues still, even in the face of this, say that it's a myth, it doesn't exist. But that's because the dead vote Democrat. And now Trump is coming out saying it's our whole system is rigged. We're seeing how this is rigged. The debate was rigged. We already reported on that yesterday. There's just a very peculiar things. Hillary Clinton signaling the moderator as well. Now he's saying, you know, I had to put up with the anchor and fight the anchor on everything I said. Indeed, he did. He says, what a rigged deal. I tell you, we're in such a rigged system. It's terrible. He also did say that his mic was defective, and that was true, reported by the New York Times today, that indeed they did admit that he was given a defective mic. Something was wrong with his audio. Of course, we saw that CNN poll that was totally provably gamed, came out the clear winner, but then when they were citing these other polls that showed Trump as the clear winner, they were saying that Trump was citing non-scientific polls. Only the CNN poll is the scientific one. But, you know, he's coming out saying that they're coming after him in all ways. Proof of that is the fact that they're talking about this freaking beauty queen. Megyn Kelly actually told Team Trump to just shut up about women's weight. But it's the media who is dragging out these things from decades ago and continuing to talk about irrelevant things. People, we are about to go to World War III. Who cares if Donald Trump called a beauty pageant winner Miss Piggy because she gained 50 pounds while she was representing the beauty? It's a beauty pageant. They're supposed to be objectified. That's the whole point of it. And of course, Megyn Kelly is coming out saying, well, some might find that objectification objectionable. Okay, but Bill Clinton, the rapist, is just fine.
Joe Biggs here with INFOWARS.com. Now I want to talk about the first presidential debate for a moment. Remember it? I do, because it was pretty bad. The fact that MSNBC's Lester Holt came out and only asked Hillary Clinton 2 questions and Trump 15 questions. The media attacked him for days after that. But for some reason, Teflon Don was still able to sit there and remain ahead in the polls. Now, right immediately after the debate, Trump led in 90% of the polls. And still to this day, here we are, a week later, Trump is still ahead over Clinton in key battleground states as well. Now, some of the things that we need to look at for this next presidential debate. Sadly, it looks like the CIA will be running the second presidential debate. Why? Because CNN's own Anderson Cooper, who works for the Clinton News Network, will be moderating alongside Martha Raddatz of ABC. These two will be co-hosting and moderating this next presidential debate. And they're also going to be taking questions from Facebook, who lots of times censors any kind of conservative trends that are happening on there as well. And we're supposed to be getting questions from Facebook to ask these presidential candidates that I'm pretty sure are going to be biased, leaning more towards helping Hillary and leaning more towards defeating Donald Trump. Now, let's talk about Anderson Cooper for a second. Anderson Cooper interned for 2 summers at the CIA. Now, we know that the CIA started a program, a secret campaign, back in the 1950s called Operation Mockingbird. The organization recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network to help present the CIA's views. Now, we know that a lot of people are scared of Donald Trump, a presidency that could get rid of a lot of elites, a lot of people that have a lot of money invested in Hillary Clinton, and she has a lot of money invested in them as well. Now, a lot of people were very disappointed in how Donald Trump came out in that first debate against Hillary Clinton. A lot of people thought that he was too soft, that he didn't come at her hard about enough topics, about Bill Clinton's affairs, about so many other topics that are out there that we could go on, Benghazi, the email scandal. You know, I think there's a strategy that Trump is following. Now, I have a lot of buddies who are Green Berets who went through the Special Forces selection. And in that, you have to have 3 PT tests. Now, if you come into that first PT test and you give it everything you have, there's a good chance that after you start going through selection, that you're running a lot, you're ruck marching, your PT scores are going to decline. And by the time you get to that third one, you're going to start off here and end up here. And that's not what people want to see, because they're going to remember you by the last thing you've done. And that's what happens in selection. Now, we have 3 presidential debates that Trump has to go through to defeat Hillary Clinton. Now, the first one, he came out very moderate, very presidential, didn't attack too hard, and that's good. We need him to do that on the first one. The second one, he needs to step up his game a little bit, and by the time he gets to that third presidential debate, it should be the shock and awe campaign. He should be hitting her from every side about every single scandal that she's been involved in, along with her husband as well, and the money that they've given to people who have helped oppress other people. Now, she claims to be this champion of the LGBT community and for women's rights, but she gives money to people in Saudi Arabia and takes money from them as well, where they openly behead homosexuals, throw them off bridges, and you can have a wife can have her head chopped off by her husband without having any kind of facts or any due process for a reason why. He could just say that she cheated on him, boom, drag her out of the car, chop her head off, and the police will do nothing for it. That's the kind of women's rights that she's fighting for. That's the kind of LGBTQ rights that she's fighting for when, after the Paris attack or after the Pulse nightclub attack, she brings in the father of the man who killed all the people at the gay nightclub and has him sitting right behind her in the debate. Makes no sense whatsoever. But she seems to be their champion, and everyone still wants to go out and vote for her. So this is what I want to say to Donald Trump. You started off the right way. You need to come out a little bit harder on the second one. And on the third one, it needs to be a shock and awe campaign. And hit her on every single scandal, because the last debate is the only debate that people will remember in history. And that's going to be the debate where you can take America back and make it great again. This has been Joe Biggs with INFOWARS.com.
FBI Director James Comey was on the Hill again, digging himself a deeper hole of bottomless federal corruption as he faced an oversight hearing held by the House Judiciary Committee. His prepared statements served to block any chance of reopening the case surrounding Hillary's email debacle, regardless of the mounting evidence that was raised after Comey shut the case back in July of 2016.
Last week, the American people learned that Cheryl Mills, Secretary Clinton's longtime confidant and former State Department Chief of Staff, and Heather Samuelson, counsel to Secretary Clinton in the State Department, were granted immunity for production of their laptops. Why were they not targets of the FBI's criminal investigation?
Well, a target is someone on whom you have sufficient evidence to indict. A subject is someone whose conduct at some point during the investigation falls within the scope of the investigation. So certainly with respect to Ms. Mills, at least initially, because she was an email correspondent, she was a subject of the investigation.
Did the FBI find classified information on either of their computers?
I think there were some emails still on the computer that were recovered that were classified, is my recollection.
Isn't that a crime?
Is what a crime, sir?
Having classified information on computers that are outside of the server system of the Department of State, unsecured.
No, it's certainly something, without knowing more, you couldn't conclude whether it was a crime. You'd have to know what were the circumstances, what was the intention around that, but it's certainly something, it's the reason we conducted a year-long investigation to understand where emails had gone on an unclassified system that contained classified information.
Law professor John Turley recently said, of all the individuals who would warrant immunity, most would view Mills would be the very last on that list. If one assumes that there may have been criminal conduct, It is equivalent to immunizing H.R. Alderman and John D. Ehrlichman in the investigation of Watergate. Of James Comey's character, Breitbart reported, when President Obama nominated Comey to become FBI director in 2013, Comey promised the United States Senate that he would recuse himself of all cases involving former employers.
Recently, you became a director of Global Bank HSBC. Given that the department has entered into deferred prosecution agreement with HSBC, will you have a conflict of interest with regard to that matter? And if you do, or would have, how would you resolve that conflict?
I think it would be a conflict, and so I would recuse myself from any involvement in any matter relating to my former employers.
However, Comey earned $6 million in 1 year alone from Lockheed Martin, and Lockheed Martin became a Clinton Foundation donor that very year. Comey served as Deputy Attorney General under John Ashcroft for 2 years of the Bush administration. When he left the Bush administration, he went directly to Lockheed Martin and became Vice President, acting as a general counsel. According to records, Lockheed Martin is also a member of the American Chamber of Commerce in Egypt, which paid Bill Clinton $250,000 to deliver a speech in 2010. In 2010, Lockheed Martin won 17 approvals for private contracts from the Hillary Clinton State Department. Former Lockheed Martin Vice President and cartel money laundering HBC board member James Comey has ties to the Clinton crime machine that are so numerous. Comey himself should be investigated by the FBI rather than running it. But there he was, pretending that the extraordinary usage of immunity given to the co-conspirators of the obstruction of justice surrounding Hillary's emails was completely normal in Hillary Clinton's case, and hinting that a possible investigation of Hillary political enemy Roger Stone may be afoot.
On August 8, 2016, Roger Stone, a Donald Trump confidant, revealed that he has communicated with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange about the upcoming release of additional illegally hacked Democratic documents. Mr. Stone made these statements during a Republican campaign event while answering a question about a potential October.
Former President Bill Clinton wants to turn Motown into Mohammed-town, as he has stated publicly that the way to solve the financial crisis in Detroit, Michigan is to, wait for it, fill the city with Muslim migrants from Syria.
The truth is, the big loser in this over the long run is going to be Syria. This is an enormous opportunity for Americans. Detroit has 10,000 empty, structurally sound houses. 10,000. And a lot of jobs to be had repairing those houses. But Detroit just came out of bankruptcy, and the mayor's trying to do an innovative sort of urban homesteading program there. But it just gives you an example of what could be done. And I think any of us who've ever had any personal experience with either Syrian Americans or Syrian refugees think it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, he said that. Detroit, as you know, has completely collapsed under Democrat rule, by the way. And now Bill Clinton wants to put the final nail in the coffin of Detroit, adding insult to injury as he says there are 10,000 homes just waiting to be occupied by Muslim migrants. How is it possible that this man can say things like that and liberals still love him? Never mind, I already know the answer to that. Liberalism is a mental disorder. And guess how many Syrian refugees Hillary Clinton wants to bring to America? I'll give you a hint. More than the entire population of Detroit.
I think the United States has to do more, and I would like to see us move from what is a good start with 10,000 to 65,000.
And don't mistake this for some kind of humanitarian effort or Hillary's compassion for others, because she's not about all that. Just ask Haiti. No, this is by design. The tsunami of Muslim migrants pouring into Europe and next the United States is an orchestrated attack by globalists like billionaire George Soros, who's also bankrolling Hillary's presidential campaign. Meanwhile, the DHS is rubber stamping citizenships prior to the upcoming election, And guess who all these lucky lotto winning migrants will be voting for? Well, of course, the people who brought them here, like Hillary Clinton, who also promised them more tax money to help them through the system. So they get almost $2,000 each as soon as they get here in the United States, and then an additional $1,700 a month on top of that. Compare all that to this guy, an American hero who received medals in 2 wars. Well, he gets $1,200 a month, but Muslim refugees get $1,700. Does that sound fair to you? You see, that pisses me off right there. Yes, we are a nation of immigrants. That's something that most red-blooded, patriotic, true American patriots are damn proud of. So it's not a race issue, all right? This is about open borders. We can't afford open borders. It jeopardizes our security, and it cripples us financially. We can't allow illegal, I'm going to say it again, we can't allow illegal illegal immigrants or Muslim migrants with ties to countries with terrorism, period.
Are the powers that be hiding behind a vetting process, allowing the flow of illegal immigration in order to destroy one of the United States' founding principles, that of national security?
The increase from 2015 to the new number of 110,000 that the administration announced just a few weeks ago represents in and of itself a 60% increase over 2 years, almost a 60% increase. So similarly to doubling the number of slots that are available worldwide in the President's Summit, it's significant and also not nearly enough. It's a drop in the bucket.
But there is a vetting process that's being added by the chairman and others in this room, Mr. Babin and others who have brought forth ideas to say, how do we make it stronger?
The persons who perpetrated this crime in Paris also had visas.
I agree.
They could very well have been here.
And that is the bigger concern.
The people that blew down the Twin Towers had visas and were here.
Did vetting stop the massacre in San Bernardino, Orlando, the recent New York and New Jersey bombing, or the recent knife attack from a radical Islamicist who attacked innocent Americans in a Minnesota mall? Is abandoning your country as a refugee really the answer? And would Americans do the same under similar circumstances? No. It would be our constitutional duty to stand and defend our republic. Just how rigorous is the federal vetting program? Amy Pope, Deputy Assistant to the President for Homeland Security, explains recurrent vetting throughout this process. Pending applications continue to be checked against terrorist databases to ensure new relevant terrorism information has come to light. If a match is found, that case is paused for further review. Applicants who continue to have no flags continue the process. If there is doubt about whether an applicant poses a security risk, they will not be admitted. Many refugee applicants identify themselves to the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR. UNHCR collects identifying documents, performs initial assessment, collects biodata, name, address, birthday, place of birth, collects biometrics, iris scans for Syrians and other refugee populations in the Middle East, interviews applicants to confirm refugee status and the need for resettlement. Applicants are received by a federally funded resettlement support center. They collect identifying documents, compile information to conduct biographic security checks. Biographic security checks start with enhanced interagency security checks. Refugees are subject to the highest level of security checks of any category of the traveler to the United States. U.S. security agencies screen the candidate, including National Counterterrorism Center, the intelligence community, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and the State Department. The screening looks for indicators like information that the individual is a security risk, connections to known bad actors, and outstanding warrants, immigration or criminal violations. They then go through a Department of Homeland Security interview, another biometric security check, a medical check, a cultural orientation and assignment to domestic resettlement locations. They then travel to the United States, arrive, and are then required to apply for a green card within a year of their arrival. So, does that make you feel safer? Well, it shouldn't. Let me ask you, does the vetting process even matter? Breitbart reported leaked documents with sensitive FBI data exclusively obtained by Breitbart Texas reveal that 7,712 terrorist encounters occurred within the United States in 1 year, and that many of those encounters occurred near the U.S.-Mexico border. The incidents are characterized as known or suspected terrorist encounters. Some of the encounters occurred near the U.S.-Mexico border at ports of entry, and some occurred in between, indicating that persons known or reasonably suspected of being terrorists attempted to sneak into the U.S. across the border. In all, the encounters occurred in high numbers in border states. It is impossible to know just how many of the 500% increase of Hillary Clinton's purported refugee invasion would self-radicalize once they reach United States shores. We are clearly being set up for disaster, and our national security is being ignored. John Bound for INFOWARS.com.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice.
Will the Muslim ghettos that are crippling Europe right now strike America next? Well, that all depends on the next election. INFOWARS reporter John Bound joins us now. We just saw your report on the tsunami of immigrants that is striking Europe, soon to be in the United States as well, if we're not careful.
Well, they're here, you know, and one thing that our Constitution guarantees is that we ensure our domestic tranquility and we provide for the common defense. And everything that Obama and company have done has been an act of going against the very foundation of this country, which is to provide a common defense and provide national security. The national security is obviously being used on us, the Americans. And a flow of terrorist organizations have already been here for decades. They've
and I want to cut you off, but you've been on the border towns. You've done reports right there on the Texas border. Mm-hmm. And these guys, the Texas Border Patrol volunteers, we've seen that they are seeing alarming items such as Iranian cash. So it's not just all Mexican immigrants, folks, on where they're seeing Iranian cash, Muslim prayer rugs, and Arabic to English translation books. They're here.
The most alarming aspect of all this is that a lot of this, you know, we live in an era right now where we're getting our information from hackers and Snowden-level intrusions, and it's the only way we can get our information. And at the end of that report, I read what Breitbart Texas had revealed, that 7,712 terrorists were encountered. Terrorist encounters were held right there on the border of the United States and Mexico. So as these small skirmishes crop up, like what happened in Orlando, and that wasn't small by any account, that was a record mass shooting by a single shooter. Or, you know,
but it was a radical Muslim terrorist.
It was a radical Muslim terrorist who, even to this day, I don't know if you knew the Gold Star mother who was asking Obama why he won't say radical Islam. Mm-hmm. He still won't say it because he doesn't want to offend anybody. Well, we're getting past the point of offending anybody. It's going to be really offensive when you've got a machete in your skull, or your kid's arms are blown off, or these things continue to aggressively, exponentially increase.
Well, that's right. And a lot of the bleeding-hearted liberals, this is the way they get you. They say it's a humanitarian effort, and a lot of liberals do understand it's because of U.S. foreign policy that this is happening, but what they don't understand, it is by design. I mean, these are proxy wars that are there by design to destabilize the regions there so the United States could take over, take advantage of their resources, because this is another strategic placemat on the grand chessboard. And trust me, folks, they want to do the same thing here at home. That's why George Soros is funding Black Lives Matter. He's also funding the whole Muslim refugee crisis in the United States. He's funding Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, and he wants to flood the entire United States with Muslim refugees. And that way, it's divide and conquer. Am I right?
Yeah, and what is the vetting process? How is the vetting process actually going to help? Or is it just more nonsense out of Washington, D.C.? It doesn't matter how many people you vet, how much information you have on them. They will radicalize once they get here, and it's upwards of, what, 23% at least, according to an article by Paul.
Well, according to Barack Obama, we're all afraid of 3-year-old baby orphans, but the sad truth is the majority are males.
Well, it's not a joke anymore. It's not a joke anymore. Americans are being killed. You're not being killed. You're sitting at home watching this TV show, but somebody else in America was attacked by a guy with a machete. There was a guy that attacked a bunch of people in a mall in Minnesota. There are Americans being attacked. And what worries me is that we become this domesticated nation. Alex has in the past always said that he fights for the free, wild human. Think about that. There was a time when we were like wild beasts in the Wild West in the 19th century. The Constitution meant something. And if you did something wrong, then you had to be held accountable for it against the other wild, free humans that lived here.
The Constitution meant more than a football game?
It did.
Really?
It did. Yeah, it actually did. It meant a lot. But now we've become like these tranquil, domesticated animals, you know, the pets that we keep in our house.
It's the pussification of America.
Absolutely. And we're going to either realize that very quickly, as long as we get enough people ahead of the curve like we are here. And that's not because we sit around all day and think about conspiracy theories. It's because we know the horrible facts, the horrible truth.
Well, we're talking about how they get through the border illegally, but they're also fast-tracked here through the refugee crisis. Hillary Clinton, it's like they're always trying to outdo each other, because Bill Clinton says he wants to fill the city of Detroit with Syrian refugees. Then Barack Obama says he wants 40,000 of them here. And then Hillary Clinton says, hey, I could do better than that. I want 65 to 70,000 here. And what they want is, what'll end up happening is you'll have these Muslim ghettos like you have in Belgium. You know, our guys went there. These are no-go zones. The police won't even go there. And, folks, that's not racist. That's just the cold, hard truth.
Well, there are already areas, Dearborn, Michigan.
Absolutely.
Amarillo, Texas, that are already on the verge of becoming Sharia law areas. Yep. And they're also experiencing rape is going up just like it is in Sweden. And that's happening right here in America. And it has to stop. And we have to put a stop to it. The criminals are running the pageant here. And the problem is that we have to stop that narrative. We have to invite the true narrative in and start talking to each other honestly about what's happening, and stop ignoring what's happening in places because they're 1,000 miles from you, but still in your same country.
According to Pew Research, among others, there is a great hatred toward Americans by large segments of the Muslim population. Most recently, a poll from Center for Security Policy released data showing 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans, these are people that are here, by the way, people here, 25, not 1%. By the way, 1% would be unacceptable. 1% is unacceptable. 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified.
This has to be the topic that is on the forefront of everyone's mind.
And you're absolutely right. And we're going to take a quick commercial break right now. But wait, it's not what you think. This is a TV ad that they're using to indoctrinate or brainwash people in Sweden to accept Muslim migration there. And basically they're saying, get used to it because they are there and they're here to stay.
Det finns ingen väg tillbaka.
Sverige blir aldrig som det varit.
Europa är I förändring.
There's no turning back. That's a quote. Swedish TV ad says Swedes must accept multiculturalism. It shows old Swedes and basically says you're the past. And then you've got the subtitles. a Muslim woman looks up and says something new, the new country. No turning back a woman in a hijab. And we have George Soros' own emails running the UN, running the Obama administration, running the Hillary operation, saying we're bringing these people in to break down the culture and make the Western free culture adapt to it and submit to it. Because we're so inclusive, we must bring in something uninclusive to make our people submit to this. Then the Muslims will be the client of the government.
Wow, so there you go. That's a heavy piece of propaganda there in Sweden. I don't think it's going to work here, though.
No, it's not going to work here. In fact, the Chicago Council on Global Affairs poll found that just 36% of Americans support bringing Syrian refugees in, and that's going to go down as Hillary pushes it up to 500%, just like her husband, Bill Clinton, incarcerated 500% more Americans after he became president. It's a globalist nightmare. Hillary is a globalist. And if you vote for Hillary, you're voting for a globalist stooge.
That's right. And unlike Muslim refugees who are fleeing their countries, that's not going to happen in America. We're staying here, and we're going to fight.
Welcome back to the Nightly News. I'm Owen Schroyer from INFOWARS.com, and September has been a crazy month. So in the final segment of the INFOWARS Nightly News, we're going to talk about all the craziness that happened in the month of September. Let's start with a big event that was quickly distracted from by the mainstream media.
Investigators believe he coordinated 3 terror attacks using homemade bombs
in the New York City neighborhood of Chelsea. This time, 29 people are injured. 3 hours later, word a pressure cooker is found just 4 blocks north, an undetonated pressure cooker bomb. Then, just after 8:30 Sunday night, 2 men find a backpack near the train station in Elizabeth. It contains 5 pipe bombs. And U.S. officials also tell ABC News that Rahami traveled to Afghanistan and Pakistan, later telling authorities he had a wife in Pakistan.
Based on the information we have now, we have every reason to believe this was an act of terror.
Radical Islamic terror hitting us domestically. Of course, there was also a stabbing that was related to radical Islamic terror. But we were quickly distracted from this by riots in Charlotte.
A dozen police officers hurt after riots explode in Charlotte.
Well, rioters shutting down traffic on Interstate 85, looting cars and trucks and setting things on fire. Video showing rioters jumping on top of a police cruiser, other cop cars kicked and destroyed with large rocks.
Now, much like the other riots we've seen, they were led by misinformation and false narratives, trying to say that Keith Scott was a peaceful man, didn't have a gun. It turned out that he did have a gun. He actually has shot a man before in Texas. And, of course, what happens when we see people running with false narratives? We get riots on the streets and nothing accomplished. Of course, there was another police shooting, police fatally shooting a citizen in Oklahoma. There were no riots. There were no protests. But that officer is charged with manslaughter. Now, we also had the first presidential debate in the month of September, and this was a wild one, folks. Did we catch Hillary Clinton and Lester Holt using hand signals? You can be the judge for yourself, but these videos are pretty incriminating. And of course, it only gets stranger from there. Not only does it appear that she is working with Lester Holt, it also appears she has some sort of pack and wire on her back. I'm not sure if this is a medical device or some sort of speaking device, but undeniably, you can see it in that image right there. Now, of course, we were called conspiracy theorists when we questioned Hillary Clinton's health, but how could we forget the September 11th fall at the memorial? Hillary Clinton, there she is, blacking out, fainting, things falling out of her pants. She has to be drugged into this van. Her security quickly hides her. There you can see her feet dragging. She falls. She clearly fainted. She clearly passed out. Unbelievable. This is just a crazy month of September. Now, we also saw Michael Savage get his show pulled live from the air. He started talking about Hillary's health, and what happens? Magically, he's preempted. Magically, he is pulled from many of his national syndicates. This is an example of how they want to muster or put a muzzle on conservative media. Now, of course, Gary Johnson, a presidential candidate, this guy seems to be completely clueless. Listen to what he said in the month of September.
What would you do if you were elected? About Aleppo. About Aleppo. And what is Aleppo? You're kidding.
No.
Who's your favorite foreign leader?
Who's my favorite?
Just name anywhere in the country, any one of the continents, any country. Name one foreign leader that you respect and look up to. Anybody.
Mine was Shimon Peres.
No, okay, I'm talking about living. Go ahead. You got to do this. Anywhere, any continent. Canada, Mexico, Europe, over there, Asia, South America, Africa. Name a foreign leader that you respect.
I guess I'm having an Aleppo moment in the former president
But I'm giving
of Mexico.
you the whole world.
I know.
Anybody in the world you like. Anybody. Pick any leader.
The former president of Mexico.
Which one?
I'm having a brain.
Name anybody.
Fox.
Okay, who's your favorite foreign leader?
Gary Johnson, a presidential candidate, completely clueless, completely lost in the month of September. Maybe he'll find himself in the month of October. We also had a cartoon frog declared a hate sign. That's right, folks. You thought you heard it all from the brainwashed left. You thought you heard it all from the tolerant left. But Pepe the Frog has been declared a hate symbol. You've never heard of a more childish thing in your life, a cartoon frog being considered a symbol of hate. But of course, this is nothing more than an attempt to demonize Trump and call him a racist and anything affiliated with Trump a racist. Now, we also had Colin Powell email leaks. We've seen a lot of email leaks over the course of this election cycle, and a big one in September was Colin Powell emails, in which we saw him talking trash on Hillary Clinton, basically threatening Hillary Clinton. This is something that has been a negative, obviously, for the Democrats, and even Colin Powell talking about Bill Clinton and him, well, we won't use the words he used, but basically screwing around with women in the White House, and how he most likely still does that to this day. How about Donald Trump's military endorsement? This was a historic moment for Donald Trump when they try to say the military isn't with him. Perhaps the greatest military endorsement, certainly in my lifetime, maybe of all time, where we have had, originally, there were some 90 that came out, but it's over 100 military leaders have now come out for Donald Trump. Major developments in the Trump campaign for September. How about in professional sports, folks? Well, it started with Colin Kaepernick, and then he got praised for it. And then it went on, and now more NFL players are kneeling during the national anthem. Other professional athletes are considering it. Even U.S. women's soccer player Megan Rapinoe decided she was going to kneel. Completely disgraceful for me. We had a train crash in New York and New Jersey. Now, this was wild. There was a similar incident in 2011, and then there was a strange FEMA emergency broadcast the night before the crash, alluding to green eggs and ham, if I could on a train, if I would on a train. Very curious stuff with that. We had an ISIS chemical attack that happened at a U.S. base in Iraq. Let's roll that video.
But now, as we speak, this chemical shell is being tested by the U.S. military to see exactly what was in it. This shell landed on an airbase in northern Iraq where U.S. and Iraqi troops are operating, getting ready to try and fight to take Mosul back from ISIS. The shell landed. U.S. troops went out to look at the shell. They saw something suspicious. They tested it. The first test came back positive for mustard agent.
ISIS chemical attacks on a U.S. base in Iraq. Now, we also had Vladimir Putin's favorite chauffeur die in a car crash. This was a very strange car crash. If you watch the video, you can see how he's driving, and another man or woman driving in the middle of the road swerves right into the car. Truly a surreal thing, folks. You can see it right here. The car takes a turn at the last second. On the left, boom, slams into Vladimir Putin's chauffeur. Was this an attempt at Vladimir Putin's life? Certainly another crazy development that we saw in the month of September. Now, we are on the eve, folks, of the internet handover. Here in September 30th, the internet is about to be handed over towards national conglomerates, the UN. This is without a doubt, a complete power withdrawal from the United States. Why would the United States want to hand over the internet to a national or international consortium? Why would the United States want to hand over the internet, something that we built, something that we created? Something that, because we are the beacon of freedom and free speech in the world, we should carry the torch of internet freedom. But no, Barack Obama has not taken as much power away from the United States as he'd like to just yet. He is going to go ahead and hand over the internet. And of course, Ted Cruz has, to his credit, has been trying to alert people in the government and citizens to do something about this internet handover, but apparently it was not enough. Even Donald Trump has echoed what Ted Cruz has said, and speaking about keeping the internet in the hands of the United States instead of in an international consortium. Now, of course, this is an encapsulated segment of all the craziness we saw in September. I didn't even mention all the clown attacks, dozens of clown attacks happening. So here's my question. If the month of September hasn't woke you up to start caring about this country, hasn't woke you up to start doing a little research of your own, I don't know what will. That is an absolutely crazy month that we just witnessed in the span of 9 minutes, and I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff. What will October bring? What will the October surprise be? I'm not sure, but stay tuned at INFOWARS.com, where we'll be sure to keep you updated. That's going to do it for the Nightly News. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. I hope you have a great weekend. We will be back Monday night, 7 Central, continuing to fight the war for your mind.